uh, sixth overall pick by the New Orleans Pelicans before they traded him to the Philadelphia 76ers in a draft night trade is Nerlens Noel being officially ruled by Philadelphia 76ers head coach Brett Brown to miss the entire season. And Noel is recovering from ACL surgery, which he got in March. He was his original table was 6 to 8 months, which would have put him to return around December or January. And Dr. James Andrews did the surgery, and in June he said Noel was ahead of schedule. Brian, what are your thoughts on this interesting news by a team that's in rebuilding mode?
Yeah, I think this is really interesting because, first of all, the trade. I mean, the Swamp Dogs or the Bull Sharks or the Pelicans. The Pelicans were freaking geniuses on this one, getting Drew Holiday, a solid young player who's proven in the NBA, and trading a hurt player that's it's gonna take a little bit longer. And apparently the 76ers are willing to wait on him because otherwise they wouldn't have made that trade with him as an ACL injury. With an ACL injury, they know that's a long-term rehabbing type situation and type injury. So they have to be willing to go for a long-term situation there with that. So I kind of have to wonder what the 76ers were thinking about in this, trading away Drew Holiday for, he's a top, Nerlens Noel was a top 10 overall pick, and he's a great player and stuff, but it's going to take him another year here to actually come back from rehab and then be able to start training and like pushing forward as a improving in the NBA. So I don't know. I don't see why you trade away one of your best young players, and I just don't see it. I don't see why you would do that, unless there's some kind of money issues. If there was some kind of money issues, that's the only thing I could see with that. But I think the Pelicans kind of got away with a little bit of a steal here. Now, if they could just work on that name, they'd be okay. What about
Yeah.
you? What about you? What are you thinking?
Well, the thing I find pretty interesting is that in the article on ESPN about Nerlens Noel, they have the lowest payroll in the league. They're obviously retooling for the future, and they are getting a draft pick. And in case people haven't heard about the 2014 NBA free agent class, in case Philly doesn't find anyone good in the draft, there are some really, really good players that are supposed to be free agents.
Mm.
Luol Deng for the Bulls, obviously LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony. Looking at the list right now. If you want a veteran, veteran point guard Chauncey Billups, Danny Granger is supposed to be a free agent. Kobe Bryant, even though Kobe Bryant will most likely retire by then. Paul Gasol is projected to be a free agent. Ray Allen, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade,
Yeah.
uh, Greg Oden, obviously with the 1 year contract. Larry Sanders with a restricted deal, and that's pretty much it. And Derek Favors and Gordon Hayward are both supposed to be restricted free agents.
Yeah. So we could
But
be seeing
I
Philly like trying to like unload some contracts so that then they could actually sign a bunch of free agents, which would actually make a lot of sense.
But the thing that doesn't make any sense with what Philly's doing with that trade, they traded for Andrew Bynum last year, and Andrew Bynum missed the entire season, and they ended up releasing him
Yeah.
in what could be the worst signing of all time. If it's not the worst, it's one of the worst free agent signings. And also, what are they gonna do if Nerlens Noel doesn't do anything? Their roster right now, this is their starting five. This is how
Yeah,
bad the starting five is.
it's looking
It's
really bad.
Michael Carter Williams from Syracuse is the point guard. He's supposed to be a pretty good player, but I wouldn't trust him to be the starting point guard. James Anderson is supposed to be the shooting guard. If you don't know who he is, it
Join
shouldn't
the
be a
club.
shock. He's pretty much a nobody who's like bounced around the NBA since 2010. They have Thaddeus Young, who's a pretty good player at the power forward. They have Evan Turner, who's a pretty good player as well at the small forward, and then they have Spencer Hawes at center with the infamous Kwame Brown as the backup if anything happens to Spencer Hawes.
Kwame Brown.
And in case you don't know anything about Kwame Brown, go to YouTube and watch Kwame Brown funny draft, and you'll see a hilarious video about teams bidding, being disappointed that they might sign Kwame Brown from 2012.
Oh man. Yeah, so it's basically really rough roster, and they're looking to be like Orlando was last year. You know, very few games, or like Portland dropping 13 games at the end of the year.
It's just terrible. I don't
know.
understand. Like the fans are probably in revolt in Philly if they're not protest. They were probably hugely protesting the deal, but obviously we didn't hear anything about it because if anything happened, probably the Philly media didn't really report it. But the whole thing, Nerlens
Yeah,
Noel
it was
a
all
pretty good
about
player.
Chip Kelly at the time. That's probably what was really going on. Is they were probably going into like some Philadelphia Eagles and Chip Kelly and all that other stuff at the time that was happening.
Nerlens Noel does have potential. He was projected to be the #1 pick before he suffered the ACL, and even after he suffered the ACL, there were talks of him being the #1 overall pick. And he put up pretty good numbers in his only year at Kentucky. 10.5 points per game, 2.1 steals, 9.5 rebounds, and an insane 4.4 blocks a game.
Yeah, he's a ridiculous player. I'm like, he hasn't played in the NBA yet. He's unproven. What if he turns out to be an NBA dud? I mean, then you got to hope that you're going to get a really solid player out of that other protected 2014 draft pick for the 76ers. And even that, I mean, still another unproven player. So you trade a young, proven player with great NBA stats for the potential of two unproven players, one of them hurt. It just does not make any sense.
Well, if Nerlens Noel becomes a draft bust, they have two of the biggest draft busts of all time on the same team, Nerlens Noel and Kwame Brown.
This could be the team of the draft busts.
And also, speaking of Kwame Brown, I have a player in mind that will be this year's Kwame Brown. His name is Chris Joseph. He plays for the Orlando Magic. He played as a rookie last year, and just to show how useless this guy could be, I looked up the ESPN depth chart for Orlando Magic, and he's not even listed. I'm guessing he's the third center, and when he played last year, he had almost as many fouls as points scored.
Yeah, that's really rough. My potential Kwame Brown of the year is Nazir Muhammad, who had 97 fouls and 166 points last year. I think that pretty much says it all right there. 97
it brought
fouls.
a tear to my eye.
He probably brought a lot of tears to a lot of other people's eyes too. I can just say that. All right, so
if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, don't try and throw too much of your popcorn, beer, or whatever at the screen when you see Nazir Muhammad or Chris Joseph do terrible this year. Remember, it's to be expected. They're like the 11th, 12th, 13th man, whatever it is on the roster.
It's gonna be interesting. All right, so one last thing before we head out, we're gonna talk about some predictions that have been going around. Is actually that the Denver Nuggets will miss the playoffs this year. Noah, what do you think about that?
Well, just so everyone knows, this was an article on Grantland, which is famous for what Bill Simmons does, and this was written by Zach Lowe, and this was on Tuesday that this was written, and it was 32 bold predictions. Some of them are like are pretty obvious. There'll be trades. Uh, but then there's one I'm reading, and I'm thinking to myself, what was this guy doing before he made this prediction? And the prediction is the Denver Nuggets will miss the playoffs. And he wrote a stat saying that only 7 teams in the last 20 years that won at least 55 games the previous season missed the playoffs in the next season. And Denver was 57-25, and they finished as the 3 seed in the West. They had a 38-3 home record. They had a 38-14 conference record, and their team is just getting better. It wouldn't make any sense for them to miss the playoffs. The only way they would miss the playoffs is if all their entire starting 5 got hurt. Then maybe they'll miss the playoffs. But other than that, they have one of the deepest teams in the NBA, if not the deepest team.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say they would have to have their top starters all go down with major injuries. Because this, especially with that home record. That home record is just not home wrecker. Sorry, that home record that they've got is just insane. And I mean, a team with a good, solid home record is not going to. They're just not going down easily like that. That obviously shows that your home turf has a big influence on opposing teams when they come in. So that's going to guarantee a good chunk of wins right there. So it's got to be the injuries are the thing that actually hurt them, not their players.
Well, here are some other things that the guy listed in the article, which could explain why he made this crazy prediction. He said there's a coaching change from George Karl to Brian Shaw. Brian Shaw played for the Lakers. He was on multiple NBA final championship teams there. And I guess he doesn't really have a lot of faith in the head coach there. But Brian Shaw must be pretty good because Kobe Bryant was really pushing the organization to hire him when it was a choice between Mike Brown and Brian Shaw, and he wasn't too happy when they hired Mike Brown.
Okay.
The other reason is that they lost Andre Iguodala to free agency in the offseason, and Danilo Gallinari will be hurt for several weeks. But they have so much depth on their team that it wouldn't make any sense for them to miss the playoffs. And
they could easily make a mid-season run and make the playoffs fine.
I don't see 5 teams that are better than them in the West, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the guy's going to write an apology article when in the end of March or early April, Denver Nuggets clinch a playoff spot or get at least 45 wins. I wonder if he's going to write, I am sorry for making this crazy prediction of the Denver Nuggets missing the playoffs.
This one's going to be rescinded.
I will never doubt Brian Shaw again.
I will never doubt the Denver Nuggets again.
Oh, yeah. Totally agree.
All right.
Oh, and in other big news, the NBA Finals is going to have a new format starting in the 2014 NBA Finals. It used to be a 2-3-2 format, meaning it was 2 home games for either the Western Conference or Eastern Conference team, then 3 for the other team, and then 2. And one of the things that the NBA owners apparently really loved about this new format is that there's an extra day off between Game 6 and Game 7, and then the team that would be on the road for Game 5 typically in the 2-3-2 format, they would be away from home for 8 days. And that's if they came back for Game 6 at home.
My thoughts on this are more along the lines of this is really good for teams that don't have to travel very far when they're going back and forth between the different cities in order to from city to city. But I think there should be put a little bit of an exception put in here for teams traveling. I mean, you get teams like the Knicks and the Lakers, or the Knicks and the Clippers in there or something. You're going East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, West Coast. One game, one game, one game. I mean, that is so hard to do for players, and neither team would be in good shape with that. So I'm saying they got to throw a little bit of an exception in there for that kind of situation, so that they could change that schedule based on if there are East Coast, West Coast teams in the NBA Finals. Or they could even have them at a neutral site or something, so they don't have to travel as much or something like that. Well, that's an idea too.
Here's an interesting stat they mentioned in the ESPN article by Brian Windhorst. The 2-3-2 format began in 1985 when the NBA Finals was between the Boston Celtics and the LA Lakers. And in that format, the home team won the middle 3 games only 3 times.
Wow.
So, honestly, it's going to be good for the NBA because they'll get more fans. If each game could potentially be an elimination game to determine the finals, the arena could be sold out for every single game. Because you've seen in the NBA Finals, when they don't play in Miami, it's not sold out. With Oklahoma City, yes, it was sold out, but with San Antonio, it wasn't really sold out. With Dallas, it wasn't really sold out.
Yeah.
If it's any other Eastern Conference team beside the Knicks or the Celtics, it wouldn't be sold out in the 2-3-2 format. Because if they don't win, let's say it's Game 4, if they don't win Game 4 in the 2-3-2 format, then they could be like, oh, I could wait until Game 5, so I don't need to get a Game 4 ticket. In this format, for Game 4, the fans are going to be like, I have to get this Game 4 ticket because Game 5 is going to be on the road, and then Game 6 will be at home, and then Game 7, I can't wait until Game 6 because they might clinch by then.
So yeah, exactly. Really so it would definitely bump up ticket sales for that team. That when the people are not sure if they're actually gonna come back and actually play games towards the end of the series. So yeah, that definitely will put in a lot for that, especially teams that basketball isn't the number one sport in their city too. Like you said, Dallas. The Mavericks. Basketball, it's just not as big as the Cowboys. The Cowboys are the big deal sport of that, or team of Dallas. So yeah, that makes a whole ton of sense. My only concern is just on how much travel time that happens for those players if they're going East Coast, West Coast. Everything else looks fine to me. Yeah.
Is it safe to say the Miami Heat established a dynasty this year and win their 3rd title in 4 years?
I don't see a 3-peat. Sorry, I just don't see it.
You don't?
I don't
no, it wouldn't be a
3-peat.
It'd be 3 in 4 years.
Oh, might be.
Well, 3 in 4 years, technically a 3-peat, but they've made 4 NBA. It would be their 4th NBA Finals trip.
Yeah, I don't see them winning this year. Again, I just don't see it. Can't say it.
So who do you see winning?
There's a couple other teams that are potential deals. The Bulls have a really good shot at it after a deep playoff run last year, and having Derrick Rose back. Basically, last year they needed some more points. So I mean, that's a real potential big time team there. Even the Golden Gate Warriors. I mean, they got a solid team. They got some young players. They had a couple more guys. They could be a big time contender, and they had some really good home stands in the playoffs last year. So that'd be interesting to see.
I have 2 sleeper teams that I think are going to do pretty well this year. Obviously, Golden State.
Yeah.
Getting Andre Iguodala, adding him to Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, David Lee, and Andrew Bogut if healthy. That's an amazing starting lineup that they have there. And then my other team is the Detroit Pistons.
Really?
That starting lineup, they don't really have a lot in the bench, but as we've seen with Miami Heat, if you have a good enough starting lineup, it makes up for everything. The Heat have a terrible bench outside of Ray Allen, and look what they're doing on a yearly basis.
Totally. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the NBA buzz. Stay tuned in to fourth quarter clutch. We got some more World Series coverage coming up. Week 8 preview coming up as well for NFL. So keep it tuned in. Keep it, and of course you can check us out on Twitter as well. Fourth quarter clutch. So stay tuned in and keep it real, guys. Thanks.